I will never forget the moment my own family looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong. It happened on the night of my granddaughter's pre-wedding party. I had dressed in my best suit, polished my old shoes, and even rehearsed a small speech. I was excited. I thought they'd be happy to see me, but when I walked toward the entrance of the venue, my daughter-in-law blocked me with the coldest smile I had ever seen. "Uncle, this party is for important guests only," she said, loudly enough for others to hear. I frowned. I'm her grandfather. She leaned closer. "Exactly, and you don't fit the image tonight. People will judge. Please don't make it embarrassing." Before I could respond, my son appeared my own blood, and he avoided my eyes like I was a stranger. "Dad, maybe you should sit this one out," he whispered. My heart cracked. "Sit it out. Your daughter is engaged, and I'm being asked to leave." He shrugged, forcing a smile. "It's a high-profile event. Let's not make things awkward." Behind them, I heard someone whisper, "Why is he even here? He looks too simple for this place." Another voice added, "He doesn't belong with wealthy people." Wealthy people, as if I was nobody, as if I hadn't spent my entire life building the foundation they stood on. My granddaughter came out for a moment, laughing with her fiancé's family, and when she saw me, she froze. Instead of running to hug me like she used to, she simply nodded, distant, embarrassed. Then walked away without a word. That was it, the final cut. My son turned to the guard and said, "Please escort him out." A guard, a boy younger than my shoes, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Sir, please step aside." I stood there, humiliated, rejected, treated like a stain on their perfect evening. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was the truth. The entire venue, the grand ballroom, the chandeliers, the garden, the stage, all of it, was already mine. I had bought it quietly a month earlier, and that night, I decided to reveal it. I still remember the smell of roses and expensive perfume the moment I walked up to the entrance of the grand ballroom. Chandeliers glowed behind the glass doors, cameras were flashing everywhere, and laughter echoed across the marble floor. It was supposed to be a happy day, my daughter Alia's engagement party. A day I had dreamed about since the moment I first held her as a newborn. But instead of a proud father entering to bless his daughter, I was stopped like some stranger who had no business being there. I had spent the entire morning selecting a gift for her, a delicate gold bracelet with her initials engraved. Something I bought with my savings, even though she once mocked me for not keeping up with her lifestyle. Still, I believed this day might soften her heart. Maybe she'd remember the father who raised her, not the one she pretended was invisible in front of her in-laws. When I reached the entrance, 2 security guards blocked my way. "Sir, invitation." One of them asked politely. I smiled. I'm the father of the bride. His face went stiff, like he had been told to expect this exact moment. He shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we were instructed not to let you in." My heart stuttered. "Not let me in? What nonsense!" Before I could finish, the glass doors slid open and my daughter stepped out. Alia, dressed in silver silk, beautiful, cold as ice. Her fiancé, Hamza, stood behind her with a smug smirk as if he was watching entertainment unfold. My ex-wife, Sarah, was beside them, adjusting her necklace like she was preparing for a magazine shoot. Alia didn't greet me. She didn't smile. She didn't even pretend to be concerned. Her first words sliced through me like a knife. "Why are you here?" I froze. "Why am I, Alia? This is your engagement. I'm your father." She rolled her eyes loudly enough for everyone inside the hall to hear. "Yes, you were my father when it mattered, but this event is, well, not really your kind of place." People passing by slowed down, pretending not to stare but listening carefully. Phones hovered. Someone whispered, "Is that the father she complained about?" I swallowed hard. "Alia, don't do this. Let me in. 5 minutes. I brought you something." She stepped closer, lowering her voice but sharpening each word. "You'll embarrass me. My in-laws think we come from a refined family. Please don't ruin that." My hands trembled, not because of anger, but because those words, "my in-laws think we come from a refined family," meant she believed she had to hide me. Hamza leaned forward, smirking. "Uncle, maybe next time you dress more appropriately for our events." I looked down at my outfit, a clean, ironed shalwar camis with a simple waistcoat. I wasn't dressed poorly. I was dressed respectfully. But to them, it didn't matter. My throat tightened. "Alia, just let me inside. I won't stay long." She turned to the guard, pointed at me, and said the sentence that burned itself into my bones forever. If he tries to come in, remove him. He doesn't belong here. Gasps, whispers, tittering laughter. I felt my heart crack, one slow piece at a time. She walked away, the doors closing behind her with a soft hiss, as if sealing me out of her life completely. But she didn't know one thing, one tiny detail about me she had spent years ignoring. A secret that would flip her entire world upside down. And that secret was the reason I didn't shout back. I simply stepped aside and watched her walk away, because I knew something they didn't, something that would change everything. I stood outside the ballroom, trying to gather myself. The cold evening breeze brushed against my skin, carrying bits of conversations from inside the hall. I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, and music, all sounds of celebration that should have included me. But instead, they had shoved me out like a stain they wanted to hide. I tried calling a few relatives who were inside. My brother didn't pick up. My niece read my message but didn't reply. Even my childhood friend Kashif, who knew what I had sacrificed for my children, ignored my call. And then I heard whispers, real whispers, behind the decorative plants near the entrance. Sarah's sister and 2 cousins. They didn't see me standing behind them. Good thing they didn't let him in. One of them snickered. He looks like a school teacher who got lost. Please, school teachers look better. Another replied, he looks old, tired, not fit for such events. Imagine the embarrassment for Aliyah. The third chipped in. Her in-laws are loaded. She can't afford to show where she actually came from. I closed my eyes, so this is what they thought of me after 30 years of providing. Working day and night to pay school fees, medical bills, groceries. A lump settled in my throat. I stepped back, but before I could walk away, Hamza's mother walked out with her friends. Her gold jewelry sparkled, but her eyes held pure judgment. She spotted me instantly. Her eyebrows arched. She whispered to her friend loud enough for me to hear, "This is the father. No wonder they didn't want him inside." Her friend stifled a laugh. And then she said something that hit me harder than anything Aliyah had said. People should stay in places that suit them. Something inside me shattered slowly, painfully. I thought maybe I misunderstood. Maybe emotions were clouding my judgment. But the universe wanted me to hear even more. Because the next group who walked out were my own son, Imran, and his girlfriend. Imran wasn't shocked to see me outside. In fact, he looked annoyed. "Dad," he sighed, "why didn't you just stay home? You know how these events are. You don't fit this scene." I stared at him. "I don't fit this scene. I raised this scene. I paid for your university. I bought your first car." He shrugged, yes, and we're thankful, but times have changed. People expect different things now. High society, presentation, image, presentation. That was all I was to them, an outdated image to be hidden. His girlfriend whispered, "Just let him go. He's embarrassing you." Imran nodded. "Dad, please leave before Aliyah gets upset again." Again, meaning they had talked about me even before I arrived. Something cold and sharp rose inside me, not anger. Clarity. Suddenly, everything started making sense. The distance, the lack of calls, the busy lives, the excuses. It wasn't life pulling them away. It was shame. They were ashamed of me. Me, the man who built everything they stood on. I stepped back, exhaling slowly, but none of them knew the truth. They had no idea that the shimmering ballroom behind them, the grand hall, filled with imported flowers and billionaire guests, belonged to me. They had no idea the person they were mocking was the owner of this entire $5 million venue, but I stayed silent because the time wasn't right, not yet. They would find out soon, and when they did, everything they believed would crumble. After standing outside for what felt like an hour, I finally walked away from the entrance. Not because I was defeated, but because I was done. Done begging for basic respect. Done lowering myself to be accepted by people who shared my blood but not my values. I walked toward the parking area slowly, each step heavy but steady. My chest ached, but my mind felt strangely clear. The city lights shimmered on the pavement, reflecting the exact moment I knew something within me had changed forever. Then my phone buzzed, a message from my lawyer, Mr. Rahim. Sir, all documents are ready. Just waiting for your confirmation to proceed with the inheritance restructure. I stared at the message, breath caught in my throat. Today of all days, this message felt poetic, because while my children were busy pleasing wealthy in-laws, they had no idea what my actual worth was. They had no idea that I wasn't just some middle-class father in a simple waistcoat. They didn't know about the investments I had nurtured quietly for decades. They didn't know the venues, properties, land shares, and businesses I silently owned all under a trust they never bothered to ask about. And most of all, they didn't know that this entire $5 million venue, the same place whose doors they shut in my face, was mine. Not inherited, not gifted, not borrowed. Mine. I built it over 20 years. Brick by brick, event after event, I poured my life into it so my family would never struggle the way I did. But now that I knew how they truly saw me, I realized something. Money doesn't buy respect. And giving people too much too easily makes them forget your value. I reached my car, unlocked the door, and took one last look at the sparkling building. Inside, they were laughing, dancing, showing off, pretending to be elite. If only they knew who was really paying for every light bulb in that hall. I sat down, exhaled deeply, and typed back to my lawyer, "Proceed." He replied instantly, "Understood. The new will and property transfers will be finalized tonight." A strange calm washed over me. Not revenge, not anger, just acceptance. If my own children could throw me out of a celebration held in my own venue, then maybe they didn't deserve what I had spent my life building. I turned on the engine, and as I drove off, I realized they had no idea the storm that was coming, no idea that their entire future had just shifted in one silent decision. Little did they know, this humiliation would cost them more than they could ever imagine. Because tonight was not the end. It was the beginning, the moment I decided who my true family would be. And the next time I walked into that ballroom, things would be very, very different. As I walked away from the venue that night, the cold air stung my face, but not as sharply as the words I had heard. Every step felt heavy, almost dragging memories out of the shadows, memories of years my family had forgotten, or chosen to ignore. When Fahad and his sister were little, I used to work 2 shifts a day, a factory job in the morning, driving a rickshaw at night. My hands often trembled from exhaustion, but I kept going because I wanted them to have a life better than mine. I wanted them to study in good schools, wear clean uniforms, feel proud when parents were called to award ceremonies. But what they never knew was how many nights I slept on an empty stomach so they could eat properly. How many times I pretended I wasn't hungry because there was only one serving left in the pot. How often I said, "I'll eat later," knowing very well there wouldn't be a later. There were days I wanted to quit everything. My back ached, my feet developed cracks, my hands bled from factory work. But whenever I saw their small faces sleeping peacefully, I felt my strength return. I never wanted them to feel poor. I never wanted them to feel less. I saved every rupee I could. I avoided spending on luxuries. I repaired old shoes instead of buying new ones. I washed and ironed my shirts again and again until the fabric thinned. But I never let my children see the struggle behind the scenes. They only saw what I gave them, not what it cost me. Over the years, they grew older, and so did their expectations. They wanted brand, name shoes, new gadgets, trips, fancy weddings, and I provided what I could. But somewhere along the way, my sacrifices became invisible to them. They started comparing themselves to richer families and looking at me with silent resentment, as if I had failed them. As I reached my small apartment that night, the humiliation echoing in my ears, I sat down on my wooden chair and stared at the ceiling. They thought I didn't belong at the party. They thought I had nothing. They thought I was just an old, broke man, but they didn't know the truth. They didn't know what I had built quietly, slowly, brick by brick. And they definitely didn't know the biggest secret of all, a secret that would change everything. In the dull light of my room, I unfolded the old papers, some yellowed, some crisp, some stamped, some handwritten. Each sheet held a chapter of the life I never shared with anyone. It started years ago, when I was still driving my rickshaw. One night, While waiting for passengers near a construction site, a man sat beside me on the curb. He was an older gentleman, well-dressed but humble. "You work hard," he had said, watching me wipe sweat from my forehead. I laughed. What else can a man like me do? But he shook his head. "Work hard, yes, but think smart too." That conversation changed my life. He told me about saving not just in a bank, but in small investments. He explained how property appreciates over time, how land doesn't betray you, how even tiny plots can turn into something big if you're patient. I didn't understand everything then, but I understood enough. From that day, I set a new goal. Every month, no matter how broke I was, I would save something, and I did. Sometimes it was 500 rupees, sometimes 1,000. Sometimes nothing for a month, but then more the next. After 6 years, I bought my first tiny plot on the outskirts of the city. Everyone laughed at me. "Who buys land here? It's useless. This area will never develop. You wasted your money." But I didn't listen. Over time, factories were built nearby, new roads were constructed, prices tripled, then quadrupled. I sold that first plot and bought 2 more, then 5, then a share in a small warehouse. Quietly, without telling anyone, I kept reinvesting, growing my savings. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't upgrade my phone. I didn't show off. I didn't say a word. When Fahad started earning, he assumed I was still struggling. When my daughter married, she believed I barely contributed anything. Even my grandchildren thought I was the simple old man who brought small gifts on birthdays, and I let them think that, because I didn't want money to become the reason they pretended to love me. But now, after being humiliated and pushed aside like a stranger at my own granddaughter's event, I realized something. They didn't value me even without the money. So what difference did hiding it make? I leaned back, looking at my dozens of documents, investments, deeds, ownership papers. They had no idea their broke old father was worth far more than the entire party they had just thrown. My fingers paused over the envelope with the deep blue seal, the lawyer's seal. It was less than a month old. Inside it were documents that could change the entire direction of my life and theirs. I remembered the day I met the lawyer, a smart, confident woman named Advocate Hania. I had gone to her office to finalize some paperwork related to my latest investment, a large, beautiful commercial venue on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't just any venue. It was one of the most popular luxury locations for events, including weddings, corporate functions, and parties valued at nearly $5 million, and I was about to become its owner. When I first saw the property, the sparkling chandeliers, the marble floors, the glass doors that reflected golden light, I never imagined one day I'd walk through them as the owner. "Sir," she had said, sliding the final file toward me, "once you sign this, the venue will be officially transferred to your name." I hesitated, not because I doubted the decision, but because I was overwhelmed. A man who once drove a rickshaw at night was now signing papers for a multimillion-dollar property. Life had strange ways of turning around. I signed, and I kept it secret. No one in my family knew, not Fahad, not Samina, not my daughter, not even my grandchildren. They thought I lived a quiet, simple life because I had nothing. But the truth was, I lived quietly because I had built everything. Now, as I held the lawyer's envelope, something inside me shifted. All those years of sacrifice, all those nights I worked until my bones ached, all the times I swallowed insults, all the moments I stayed silent, for what? To be humiliated at the door of a party hosted in a venue worth less than a third of what I now owned. My humiliation wasn't just disrespect. It was ignorance, blind arrogance. They thought I didn't belong at a party. But they had no idea that I owned a place far grander than the one they kicked me out of. I closed the envelope gently, as if sealing a decision that could not be undone. It was time to stop hiding, time to stop letting them define my worth, time to stop watching them pretend they were above me. A plan started forming in my mind, a bold one, a shocking one, a plan that would bring them face to face with the truth. Days passed since the engagement party, but the sting of that night hadn't faded. If anything, the coldness from my family grew sharper. I thought maybe, just maybe, They'd reach out, apologize, or at least acknowledge my pain. But no, the phone calls stopped. My messages went unread. My son, Fahad, who once answered every call, now kept his distance. I learned from a mutual friend that they were discussing how embarrassing it was to have me near the family gatherings. My own blood was telling others I wasn't fit for their social circles. I tried to keep my dignity, but it was hard. I overheard whispers at my workplace, at the mosque, even on the street. Did you hear? The father got kicked out of his granddaughter's party. The shame wasn't just mine, it seeped into every part of my life. Yet I reminded myself this was their weakness, not mine, their inability to see beyond money and appearances. I thought of all the sacrifices I'd made for them, and a fire began to grow inside me. They had no idea what I was truly worth. I kept my head down, but every night I opened the envelope from my lawyer, the proof of my ownership, a silent promise that I would no longer be invisible. The call came on a quiet afternoon. My lawyer's voice was calm but firm. Sir, the property ownership has been officially transferred to your name. The documents are in my office, ready for you to collect. I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Holding those papers would be like holding my dignity back in my own hands. I went to her office the next day. Hania greeted me with a warm smile. Congratulations, sir. You're officially the owner of the venue. She handed me the thick folder with every official stamp, every legal signature proof that the venue where they rejected me was mine. I held the folder close. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of my resilience. Hania looked at me thoughtfully. What will you do now? I smiled faintly. Something they won't forget. The evening air was heavy as I drove back to the venue, not as a rejected guest, but as the owner. My heart pounded with a mixture of nerves and resolve. At the entrance, the same security guards stood, but this time I showed them the documents. Their expressions changed instantly from suspicion to surprise. Inside, the guests were still mingling, unaware of the storm about to hit their celebration. I spotted Fahad and Semina across the room. My son's face went pale when he saw me. I approached calmly, holding the folder. Fahad, Semina. I said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I think it's time you knew who really owns this place. Murmurs spread quickly. Phones started recording. Cameras turned toward me. Fahad stammered, Dad, what are you doing here? I smiled. I'm here to remind you all I belong here, more than you think. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. As the murmurs in the room grew louder, I took a deep breath and raised my voice to make sure everyone heard me clearly. This is my venue. The words echoed through the grand hall, bouncing off the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Conversation stopped. Glasses paused halfway to lips. The music seemed to fade into silence. Everyone turned to look at me, my son, my daughter, the in-laws, even strangers who had never seen me before. Fahad's face drained of color. Samina's eyes widened in disbelief. Aliyah stopped mid, laugh, staring at me as if I'd become a ghost from the past. I held up the folder filled with official documents, the ownership papers, every stamp, every signature. They say I own this place, built it from the ground up. The venue you shut me out of, the one you pretended I didn't belong to. Gasps swept across the crowd. I was humiliated at the entrance because you thought I was a nobody. But the truth is, you were guests at a party held in a building I paid for, and that changes everything. The room was a mix of shock, whispers, and stunned silence. Fahad tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. My voice softened, but the power behind it remained. Respect isn't given because of money. It's earned by how you treat others, and you, my family, lost sight of that. The silence shattered like glass. Alia's eyes welled with tears, not just from shock, but from the weight of realization. Dad, why didn't you ever tell us? I looked at her, pain and disappointment mixing in my gaze. Because you never asked, because when you needed me, I was there. But when you wanted to push me away, I stayed silent. Semina whispered harshly, you could have told us, we thought you were struggling. Fahad, still pale, tried to defend himself. Dad, we didn't know. We thought you thought wrong. I interrupted. You judged without knowing. You mocked the man who built the foundation you stand on. Guests whispered amongst themselves, some nodding, others exchanging awkward glances. Few approached me quietly, expressing sympathy. Others took out phones, capturing this unexpected twist. One woman whispered, "I can't believe he owned this place all along." The realization rippled through the crowd like wildfire. It wasn't just a party anymore, it was a reckoning, and I was holding the key. The atmosphere thickened. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others whispered accusations and apologies. I stepped forward and addressed the venue manager. "Please, end the party now." The manager blinked, surprised. "Sir, this event is over. I want everyone to leave, especially those who disrespected me." Gasps filled the room. My family protested, but I raised my hand, silencing them. "I am the owner here. If you want to stay, you will treat me and this place with respect. Until then, the doors are closed." The manager nodded hesitantly and began informing guests. Fahad pleaded, "Dad, please don't do this." I looked at him firmly. "You chose this, Fahad." Slowly, the guests began to leave, conversations quieting into awkward goodbyes. My family's faces were a mix of regret, shock, and disbelief. As the last of them exited, I locked the doors behind them, turning the key with a sense of finality. I stood alone in the grand hall, victorious, but also saddened, because the cost of respect lost was heavy. And tonight, they had learned a lesson they wouldn't forget. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. After the party ended and the guests left, I didn't expect immediate peace. Instead, what followed was the hardest moment of all, a conversation with Fahad, my son. He came to me one evening, eyes red and voice trembling. "Dad, I need to tell you something." He began, avoiding my gaze. I nodded slowly, waiting. He swallowed hard and admitted, "I'm in debt, Dad, more than I wanted to admit. Business failed, loans piled up. I was scared you'd find out. I was embarrassed." His confession hit me like a thunderclap. The same son who mocked me, who pushed me away, was drowning silently. I thought if I acted confident, everything would be fine. He whispered, but I was wrong. I saw the fear behind his bravado, the weight of expectations crushing him. For the first time, he wasn't the arrogant son, he was a scared man who needed his father. I placed a hand on Fahad's shoulder and spoke gently. "Son, money can come and go. It's nothing without respect and love. I never wanted you to feel like you had to prove anything to me." I shared my heart, the years of sacrifice, the loneliness behind the scenes, and the pain of being rejected by my own flesh and blood. "You are my son, regardless of what you have or don't have. Respect is the foundation. Without it, no inheritance can hold value." Fahad's eyes filled with tears. "I understand now, Dad. I'm sorry. Our conversation was raw, real, and healing. It was a turning point not just for him, but for all of us." Days later, as I stood outside the venue, the sun setting in the sky, I reflected on everything. The pain, the betrayal, the silence, but also the love that still lingered beneath the surface. I realized that family isn't about money or possessions. It's about respect, forgiveness, and the willingness to see beyond mistakes. I decided to rewrite the will not to punish, but to teach, to remind them all that respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. As I locked the venue's doors that evening, I whispered to myself, sometimes the hardest lessons bring the deepest change. And I hoped with time my family would truly understand.